Hello and welcome back to Life.ev, a podcast that dives into exploring values. This is episode number 51. I'm your host, Ajit Panicker. I lead an air conditioning company, Nova, and Pure Blue, a tech startup in the air conditioning domain. Now, close to a year, every Saturday at 11 a.m., we've brought you conversations that go beyond business growth, focusing on the values that fuel it. Welcome to Life.ev, where we explore values in life and business. And as always, I have Vivek Asrani with me. Hi, Vivek.
Hi Ajit, good to be back. 51. We crossed half century last week, huh?
That's right. And one more to go before we actually close the season.
Yeah. Amazing.
Well, to our viewers, Vivek Asrani is the driving force behind Kemo Fastener Company, a trailblazing company in the industrial fastener sector. What sets Vivek apart is his deep engagement with the exploration of values. Now, for close to 4 years, he has dedicatedly penned his reflections on this topic every week. These insightful thoughts are accessible on his website, vivekasrani.com. Vivek has authored the book One Day at a Time Reflections from Times of Silence, which further delves into his journey and insights. This thought provoking read is available on Amazon, offering readers a chance to engage with his profound understanding of values and their role in both personal and professional lives. Well, in today's episode of Life.ev, we're delving into a reflection, which is the attitude of thoroughness. Over to you, Vivek. Let's hear it from you.
So, Ajit, thoroughness is an attitude which can really make an exponential difference in our lives. It is the difference between doing something and doing it really well. The preparation before we do something, the way we act while achieving something, and our efforts and responses uh, post something having been done really contributes to how thorough we are with everything that we do. 90% of what we do, we do pretty much really well, and we are thorough. It's, sometimes the last 10%, Ajit, is where we tend to slack off. Sometimes we just run out of the stamina and we feel that, okay, now I've reached so much, the rest of it will happen by itself. Sometimes something else comes our way and we distract ourselves to say, okay, this is pretty much done, now let me start doing something else. And sometimes that last 10% could be a little more difficult than the initial phase. And see, initially we always have the enthusiasm when something is new and different. When we are nearing the end, we just kind of, the mind also tires out a little bit, and we drop our preparedness and thoroughness. So we have to be aware as to why that happens. Another aspect of thoroughness is that we need to be aware of two things. One is, what are we trying to achieve, and the awareness of how do we go about doing it. So there are four aspects that I have spoken about, and four uh, reasons as to why our thoroughness can really be much higher than probably what it is today. One is when we start looking at life and things that we are doing with a sense of responsibility. When we know that there are others who are dependent on what we are doing and we carry a certain responsibility, it brings about a need for a level of thoroughness, because we realize that by not being thorough, we are letting other people down. Second is when we value time, we become thorough. When we do things in a shoddy manner, try and take shortcuts thinking that we'll reach there faster in the short term, maybe yes, it's a little faster, but we all know from experience that shortcuts have a way of coming back to hurt us and bite us, and then we end up spending a lot more time in undoing and redoing. So when we value time, we make sure that our mind then says, no, I better be thorough up front. Third is patience makes us thorough. if we are constantly in a hurry, if we want to do things in a haste, if we don't have the good sense to realize that certain things just take time, and preparation sometimes takes its own time for us to be thorough. If we don't realize that and we just do everything quickly, then we're not going to get the optimum results that we are looking for. And when put to the test, we find ourselves falling short because we weren't thorough with our preparation, or we were not thorough while doing something. It's synonymous, Ajit, to a good builder casting a slab, but he needs to wait for the concrete to set, right? And if he, before the concrete sets, he runs out of patience and says, you know what, let's just keep building on top of that. Somewhere the structure is going to have faults and cracks. So it's the same in our life. We keep building structures in our life, and we keep building in our lives without realizing that some of the things that we're doing need the patience to set, you know, before we can move on. So thoroughness comes when we have patience. And fourth is when we start valuing quality over quantity, we become thorough. Where the measure of our life doesn't become on how many different things that I have done to show the world, but how well I did whatever I took up and how thorough I was, and the benchmark of quality that I was able to deliver. So a sense of responsibility makes us thorough, valuing time makes us thorough, patience makes us thorough, and valuing quality over quantity, helps us develop this attitude of thoroughness.
Amazing. This, when you say as in an entrepreneurial environment, how do you balance being thorough and also the need to act quickly in a fast-paced situation? In enterprises, when you manage enterprises, there's a certain amount of speed. You cannot just say that, okay, let me just get it perfect, and that's how it is. So how do you balance between this thoroughness and the need to be fast-paced?
So there's a beautiful saying that uh, if you're well prepared, it's half done. So, there are three aspects to everything we do: before the action, during the action, post the action. If before the action we have already prepared certain things, then the going is going to be much easier when the speed out there picks up. And I'll give you an example of that. So that's the attitude prior to the action. During the action, if we are fully focused on what we are doing and our mind is where our hands are and we are always in the here and now, chances are we'll make less mistakes and therefore we will move much faster. So it's not 3 steps forward, 1 step back. It's 2 steps forward, 2 steps forward, and you just keep going on and on and on. And the third aspect, which is post action, that after the event is over, when we willfully and consciously take the time to sit back and review how it went, what were some of the learnings and insights, that is the preparation for our next set of experiences. The problem is we don't want to spend time post action. We don't want to get into the reviews and the insights, right? During COVID, we were all hit with the unexpected, and things around us were moving much faster than we had anticipated. In a sense, I mean, it's just going all crazy, right? Now, companies who had already managed their cash flows, none of us expected this, right? But what we found was companies who had managed their cash flows, who already had a good supply chain, who had a good distribution network and a brand, and whose operations were digital, were able to cope with the situation much better than the others. Now, what does this mean? Even before COVID, I was thorough. My cash flow was in place. Not because I was expecting a crisis, but that was the right thing to do. I was thorough that my supply chain was healthy, that I wasn't running neck to neck all the time. I was thorough that we had a good, diverse set of customers, because that's the way I would like to grow my business. I wasn't dependent and sitting back just because I had a few very good and big customers. And because I was thorough that, look, the world is changing and everything is moving digital, let us also start adapting to that before it becomes too late, even though we didn't need to. Of course, due to COVID, we all pivoted to digital at a different level and speed. So one is the attitude of thoroughness, Ajit, stays and remains with you. Second is, I'd heard a beautiful phrase: learn to hasten slowly. Now, this is a contradiction, right? What it really means is that no matter how fast the environment around you is, are you centered, fully focused, fully aware, and moving in a manner where it's deliberate? We very often mistake the speed out there and confuse it with haste in here. I don't think the speed out there is calling for haste in here. It's really calling for deep reflection and saying, okay, what's the next right step for me? And that actually takes us forward. It doesn't mean that you procrastinate. It doesn't mean that you don't make quick decisions. The third thing that happens is that a lot of decision making becomes intuitive because you are already in tune with all the parameters and all the factors that will help you make that decision. And why are you in tune? Because you've been thorough about various things. If I was not thorough with my customers or my team, then when a crisis hits, I'll first be running around to build a relationship with customers who I haven't spoken to for years, or try and understand the strength of my team whom I hadn't really spent time on, with reviews and other things. I said, yeah, things are going on. I don't need to bother about all this. So when you're in tune, in a way, it becomes a state of readiness and alertness, and the daily discipline of saying that the attitude of thoroughness is not to be pulled out of the bag when there is a problem. It is a way of being at all points of time. To give an example, when the army is alert and prepared in peace, when there, God forbid, there is a problem, that's not when they start training. They're ready for the situation and they respond to it. So that thoroughness is, that attitude. And then decision making becomes faster because we're already in tune.
So, has this thoroughness played a big important role for you to build trust with clients, stakeholders, and your team? Has that really actually played a big difference for you in business?
I'll tell you where it has helped me the most. It has taken away the discussion from who is right to what is right. If I'm not thorough with my work and I haven't done my homework, then the discussion will meander to personalities, emotions, and then I will be attacking the person in front of me versus the issue. But if I'm thorough with my MIS, with my homework, having studied the numbers, having understood what the issue is, then it is not who is right, but what is right. So that's the one area. Second is thoroughness and preparedness has helped me to look at the situation from various angles. And therefore, I'm also able as a business leader to give that perspective to people when we are in a situation. If I myself don't have that perspective and that 360 around a situation, how am I going to help my team navigate through that? Okay. Third is when I have been thorough with my own preparation and understanding of the situation, my willingness and ability to make a decision, and the question you asked earlier, during a conversation, to say yes or no, just becomes intuitive and easy because I already know all the factors that I need to make a good decision. But if I'm not thorough, I'll have to always say, you know what, I don't know, let me get back. I don't know, let me check. Of course, there are certain things I need to get back and check on. So it has, and the beauty is, Ajit, that it takes away the pressure. When I go into a meeting without having prepared, the pressure is on me to talk my way through that meeting. And Sometimes we don't discuss this or we don't share this with people, but in our heart, we're like, that was cool, man. I just talked my way through. I may do it once, I may do it twice, but if that becomes my default, imagine the pressure I'm living under every time I'm going for a meeting. But if I go in for a meeting fully prepared, there is zero pressure. In fact, then I'm enjoying it. So, thoroughness is actually a way of enjoying your life rather than it becoming a discipline which is, difficult or heavy.
I like to share an example of an experience that I had. I was actually invited for a hotel that was getting redone. So it's like a retrofit. It's a running hotel that needs to be redone. And we walk in and they invited everybody to actually come and bid for it. And for the first time, the entire top brass of the hotel is out there. So everybody walks in and talks about their product and how it is good and better and everything. And that's expected from us to do it. So we did speak about the product and everything, but we just spoke most of the time on how we are going to execute that project. We had a very detailed planning on how we are going to execute the project and what are the pitfalls at your side that you're going to have. The only reason being that this is a running hotel and it costs money for them to actually build that thing all over again. The entire top brass was there not to choose a product. They pretty much knew about it. They wanted to know, is that guy prepared and thought through in the execution and what is the impact? And I can tell you, I presented that entire plan because we just went in with that plan, not to make a presentation because that's what we thought was most important for that. And moment we walked out, we knew the client just said that, listen, I like you guys to work with us. Sometimes
Nice.
just being that thoroughness just builds that whole trust factor that, and can you believe it? After that, they didn't even meet us even once. It just went because you just convince the guy that you understand and you're totally thought through the whole thing. And sometimes I also feel, which I have seen with a lot of my colleagues, this quest for thoroughness also is all about perfection. I mean,
Mm.
and sometimes when you strive for perfection in your work, it's like analysis paralysis, and then things don't work out correctly. So, how do you actually differentiate between that? For me, thoroughness is not about perfection. And sometimes when you chase perfection, it's always analysis paralysis, and you just don't go in. Does this happen with you?
So, thoroughness belongs to the preparation. The sentiment of perfection or the paradigm of perfection belongs to the outcome, that it was a perfect outcome, right? So, first of all, thoroughness, you have to recognize that they sit in two different areas. Thoroughness is part of the preparation, and perfection in our minds is the outcome. We have to always remember, Ajit, that the result of whatever we do is a combination, a product of our efforts and circumstances. Circumstances are not in our control, therefore, results at one level are not in our control. But effort is in our control. Therefore, we maximize the effort. The thoroughness is in the preparation, in the delivery of the effort, and in the review of the effort in terms of the learnings and insights. Circumstances, if they were favorable, we may get a sense of, wow, it was a perfection. If circumstances were not in our favor, we won't get that feeling of perfection. So, therefore, anchoring ourselves to that perfection is, if you ask me, putting an unrealistic uh, pressure on ourselves, which is not sustainable. And really everything we do it because we want to be happy. And I just want to read out, the last paragraph of this reflection, that a good pilot never takes off without thoroughly checking his instruments. We too pilot our life every day. It is the attitude of thoroughness that will determine our altitude of joy. So drop this word perfection. Just make sure that you have been as thorough in your preparation, as focused in your execution, and as humble and grateful and open minded in your learnings and insights. Having given your best, keep moving on. Things will fall into place.
Amazing. So that's a very good note to end this year. So wish you guys a very happy new year. This is episode number 51. We've got one more episode which will take you through the first week of the next year, which will be the end of this season. Well, As usual, it's been a thought-provoking discussion with some deep insights. And we've given you enough to think about, share these ideas with your friends, with your family. You should just ask the simple questions. What do you think of this conversation? And see where this whole conversation leads. And we love to hear from you. Join the dialogue on our social media platforms. Share your questions, your learnings, and insights you gained from this episode. It's through these shared experiences and perspectives that we all grow and learn. Well, that's what we have time today for. And join us next week for the final episode on Life.ev with another interesting, enriching episode where we talk about reflections that's all about exploring values in our lives. Vivek, thank you very much. See you next week for our final episode of Life.ev. Thank you very much,
Looking
my friend.
forward to it. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.